at this hour, a news blackout on the Yemeni ruler's stay in the US continues despite huge protests at home demanding his trial. In Bahrain, Saudi-backed regime forces attack peaceful protesters. Millions of Iranians mark the 1979 Islamic Revolution in their country. And in Greece, police clash with protesters amid a nationwide strike against austerity measures. Hello everyone and welcome to the news here on Press TV. The media blackout on long-time Yemeni dictator Ali Abdullah Saleh's visit to the US continues over 2 weeks after his arrival. Saleh landed in the US on January 28th after Yemen's parliament passed a law granting him full immunity from prosecution. He's now staying at a luxury hotel in New York. The US claims that Saleh is undergoing medical treatment in the country. However, prior to his visit, Saleh said he's leaving Sana'a to get away from all the media attention. Earlier this week, he announced that he will return home before Yemen's upcoming presidential election. Meanwhile, Yemenis continue to demand that he stand trial of the killing of hundreds of protesters during the country's revolution. On Saturday, thousands of protesters, along with army defectors, rallied in the southern Yemeni city of Taiz. They call for the complete ouster of Saleh's regime. To Bahrain now, where Saudi-backed regime forces have once again attacked peaceful protesters using tear gas and stun grenades. While several people have been injured, the protesters came under attack as they tried to march towards Manama's iconic Pearl Square, which was destroyed last year. 2 American rights activists were also detained and later expelled from the country. Regime forces have also attacked the residence of the Wafaq opposition group's leader, Ali Salman. Tensions are running high in the kingdom as Bahrainis prepare to commemorate the first anniversary of the uprising on Tuesday. Protesters plan to march on former Pearl Square again on Tuesday. The uprising first began in mid-February last year. Manama's crackdown on peaceful rallies has claimed scores of lives so far. On the eve of the one-year anniversary of the Bahraini uprising, and as people in the kingdom tried to march to Manama's Pearl Square once again, protesters in London showed their solidarity with the Bahraini people's cause. Press TV's Nagis Mawalali reports.
It was the year of revolution, more successful for some than others. In Bahrain, King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa and his ruling family are still in power. Bahrainis marked the one-year anniversary of their uprising by trying to march to the Pearl roundabout again and faced another crackdown. Meanwhile, their supporters in London gathered too.
We're making demands. We want Bahrain to be a democratic country. We want the Bahraini citizens to have their liberties empowered. We want them to be to have their basic human rights. So we're out here to support, and we're also making demands.
Bahraini forces have severely cracked down on the protests with help from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Many were brutally killed, and others have had to flee. Like British couple Michael and Marinda de Bol.
My family used to live in Bahrain. My husband was a professor at the University of Bahrain up until March. He was a witness witness to what happened on the 13th of March at the university, and we had to leave, having seen what we saw. And when we left to go to Britain, came back home with British, it was pretty much said to us that we couldn't come back because of the stance we took. And for what my husband witnessed, he was also, he gave witness in the BICI report as well of what happened at the university.
Despite the crackdown, Bahrain continues to escape heavy censure from the US, which hosts its fifth fleet in the kingdom, or from other Western and regional friends. Protesters in London had a message for Bahrain's allies too.
We tell them that we're interested with the people, not with the Bahraini government, because things are going to change, and Bahrain is going to change, and tomorrow the Bahraini people is going to look at you, see where you stand today. So today our option is for tomorrow's choice.
It's been a year since the Bahraini uprising began. Protests continue inside the country, as does the killing as the ruling monarch stays in power. Unlike Tunisia or Egypt, Libya or Syria, there's been little media attention on the uprising in Bahrain, nor any political backing. It's the forgotten revolution, but Bahrainis inside the country and out continue to protest and demand their rights. Nargis Moallakhi, Press TV, London.
In Saudi Arabia, people have taken to the streets in the country's oil-rich eastern province to show their anger over the recent killing of protesters. The demonstrators call for the downfall of the ruling Al Saud regime. Regime forces have recently stepped up their clampdown on anti-government protests. 2 demonstrators have been killed and many more injured over the past days. The crackdown on demonstrations has claimed several lives since November. Protesters in the eastern cities of Qatif, Awamiya and Safwa also demanded that Riyadh release political prisoners. Activists say some 30,000 political prisoners are being held in the kingdom. Rights groups such as Amnesty International have slammed Saudi authorities for silencing dissent through intimidation and other violations of basic human rights. Now, Libya is struggling to curb violence months after the overthrow of dictator Muammar Gaddafi. A new video shows armed groups attacking civilians in the city of Misrata. Last month, rival militias clashed south of the capital Tripoli, leaving several people dead. Also, hundreds of well-equipped remnants of Gaddafi forces drove out local revolutionary fighters from the town of Bani Walid. They even raised the former regime's green flag over buildings. The city of Benghazi, which was the first to rebel against Gaddafi, has also witnessed violent protests. The security situation in the country remains fragile despite the formation of an interim government. Militias have largely refused to heed government calls to disarm so far. Now, millions of Iranians have staged rallies all across the country to celebrate the 33rd anniversary of the victory of the Islamic Revolution. Press TV's Salman Khujri reports from Tehran.
Iranians nationwide celebrating the Islamic Revolution anniversary. Millions of Iranians took to the streets all across the country to mark the 33rd victory anniversary of the Islamic Revolution back in 1979. Holding up placards and chanting slogans in support of the Islamic Revolution, people from different walks of life once again renewed allegiance with the founder of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the late Imam Khomeini.
I've come here not only to celebrate the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution, but also to voice my support for the scientific movement and the independence of our country from bullying powers.
On this day, high-ranking Iranian officials also joined the ranks of demonstrators to unanimously throw support behind the Islamic Republic of Iran, among them heads of the 3 branches of government.
To Iranians, the Islamic Revolution is the symbol of resistance against domineering powers, and every year millions of Iranians all across the country take out to the streets to celebrate their independence gained 33 years ago.
On February 11, 1979, the people of Iran, under the leadership of Imam Khomeini, toppled the US-backed Pahlavi regime, putting an end to 2,500 years of monarchy in the country.
I am here to show the US and Israel that the era of bullying is over and the unity of nations speak louder than the weapons and threats of domineering powers.
Addressing millions of demonstrators in Tehran, President Ahmadinejad said the Iranian nation has made significant progress despite Western pressure.
جهان شاهد بود که مستکبران همه عرصه ها را تنگ کردند، همه فشارها را وارد کردند تا ملت ایران هسته‌ای نشود. ان شاء الله ظرف چند روز آینده دنیا شاهد چند افتتاح چند دستاورد بسیار بزرگ در عرصه هسته‌ای خواهد بود.
Meanwhile, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, who is on an official visit to Iran, also addressed the crowd on the occasion, saying Palestinians will never recognize an Israeli entity.
Israel is trying to pressure the Palestinian people by imposing a siege on the Gaza Strip, but Palestinians will continue their struggle until the liberation of all Palestinian lands from occupation, and Palestinians will never recognize an Israeli entity.
Experts say since its establishment 33 years ago, the Islamic Revolution has become a source of inspiration for all freedom-seeking nations across the globe, and the Islamic Awakening movement, which has swept regional countries, is the result of the lessons learned from Iran's Islamic Revolution. Sama Kujuri, Press TV, Tehran.
In Greece, police have clashed with demonstrators outraged by the government's latest austerity bill. The protesters massed outside Parliament in the capital Athens, this after the coalition government approved unpopular budget cuts in return for a multi-billion-dollar bailout from the EU. The approval came amid public sector strikes that brought the transport system in the city to a halt for a second day. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Lucas Papademos has issued another warning against a default. In a televised address, he said that the country may collapse if lawmakers reject the bailout deal. The remarks came ahead of a Parliament vote on the austerity bill. Observers expect larger and possibly violent protests against the fresh spending cuts.
The presence of thousands of Greeks in front of the parliament resonated intensively in domestic and global media.
If the austerity package is passed in the parliament, it will lead the country to a political holocaust and a national extinction. Our mass presence here will hopefully drive the Troika and social conservative coalition away, their memorandum, their loan agreement and their public debt.
The committees of the Socialist and Conservative parties are now threatening their MPs with removal if they refuse to endorse the country's €130 billion loan agreement, vital for the survival of Greece's most basic fiscal infrastructure over the next few weeks.
People will gather here where the loan agreement attempts to pass through in Parliament and try to stop the voting of devastating package that will lead the country to catastrophe. This is apparent from the decomposing government that is falling apart one by one. The most important power they do not have is that given by the people.
This is a Greek homeless family. They live on €40 per month and the food portions of neighbors. They look dignified and are not dressed in cut, dirty clothes. But just like their daughter, they are a micrography of Greece. Underneath appearances, the reality remains poignant, hidden.
Greeks feel detached from their government. The European cultural, economic and political cohesion seems to have suffered a fatal blow. Soon enough, in the Eurozone, the only common ground will be austerity policies and negative fiscal targets. Konstantin Venizelos, Press TV, Athens.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people in Portugal have rallied against their government's austerity measures.
Presence of thousands of Greeks.
We are here to protest against the exploitation, the inequality and the poverty. That's what Troika's memorandum, the IMF, the EU and the European Central Bank